welcome back to What the Fertility. Today we have Hannah Jacobs on with us. She is a recurrent pregnancy loss and she has struggled for the last 15 months with 4 pregnancy losses. She's gone through a round of IVF and they did create 3 embryos. However, her first retrieval did not stick. And then she's also had a FET canceled due to thin lining. So we're happy you're here. I know your journey has been quite a long one. But we're excited you're on with us and be able to share your journey and just hear kind of what's been going on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if you want to just like kind of start from the beginning, like did you always know that you were gonna possibly have fertility issues, or was this like such a shock?
Big shock. Nobody in my family has any fertility issues, anything like that. So it was back in May of 2023 that my husband and I decided to take out my IUD and start trying. And we were lucky, or we thought we were lucky, because we got pregnant that first month after I took my IUD out. Um, and we got to 6 weeks, and the ultrasound tech gave us like a funny look when she was doing the heartbeat scan. And I know they're not supposed to like give you much information, but the way she was handling it was like super uncomfortable. Um, and so they came in and they were like, no, it's probably fine. Like the heart rate was like 91 when it's supposed to be over 100. And then we went back for the 7 week scan and there was no heartbeat at all. So we had to do it DNC, or we opted for the DNC just so that it would be quicker. So that was the first one, and that was really rough. And um, I don't know if I was expecting it, but I feel like there were weird signs. Like when we told my mom, she wasn't necessarily excited. She was like, "Oh, but it's so early." And I
Mm.
was like, "Well, you're my mom, so I'm gonna tell you." um, so I don't know. I feel like I maybe had like an inkling that something wasn't right about it. Um, and then yeah, that first one happened.
How did you feel after that first loss? Were you like, oh my gosh, I have to try again? Or did the physicians give you any advice like it's just a fluke, like this just happens? I feel like that was said to me a lot.
Yeah, they said, it's just very common. They said it's not even worth like testing the products because like insurance wasn't going to cover anything until I had 3 miscarriages. Um, so I think I was like thrown into it and it was a super shock, and I didn't know how to handle it. My husband didn't know how to handle it. We ended up needing to go to couples counseling because it was just like things were not working well with the both of us. Just like I think the way our emotions were after the miscarriage was just like, it was tough. Yeah. Big shock for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like spouses like definitely grieve differently. So it sounds like you guys experienced that pretty quickly.
Yeah. It was about, I don't know, a few weeks later, even that and to no fault of his own, he just didn't know like how to handle my emotions or like what the right things to say are.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the right things to say were either. So,
Gosh, yeah. No, I completely agree. And I know obviously Kat has also been through it too. And it's so hard, especially because you're like going through it because you're the one physically, like your body is. And then they obviously want to be there for you. But then like it's just, yeah, it's definitely hard for sure.
yeah. And I also think for men, at least in my opinion, it's harder for them to like conceptualize a pregnancy until you have a baby, a belly, like until it's something that they can see.
Yeah.
It's like again to no fault of their own, but it's just like hard for them to conceptualize the whole situation, even if you're like sick over the toilet or
Yeah,
needing
you're
to
spot
throw.
on. So you guys started therapy, it sounds like either like in the midst of trying again or maybe before then. Did you learn anything? Did you get any great advice like to help you moving forward, or was it all kind of like a parallel process of like you were learning and trying again at the same time?
Yes, both. And I don't know that I really gave my husband space like to tell me whether or not he didn't want to try again yet. I think I was just full steam, like, not going to happen twice. Like, it's going to work next time. So once my cycle returned to normal, we just started trying again. And I think I can't remember if it was late September or October of that same year that we got pregnant again. Um, and we went at 7 weeks again because obviously I was so nervous. And my doctor said, we can do ultrasounds whenever you want. So at 7 weeks, we had great growth, like 130 something heart rate. And then I had some spotting the next week. And I had that previously in the last one. So I was like, I need you guys to look, something's wrong. And
Mhm.
so I went back at 8 weeks and the heartbeat had gone. Um, and so this time they were like, you made it further along where, a DNC is definitely recommended here. And I think the hardest part of the DNC was going to the hospital and having one of the nurses recognize me.
Oh.
That was really tough.
Recognize you because you had already like gone through it and done it before.
Yep.
Oh, that's so tough. Now, I hear you. I mean, I feel like these are like some of the toughest types of miscarriages to go through is like kind of when you're finding out in the ultrasound room, especially after you've already had a heartbeat. Because I'm sure you have friends or people that have said, I mean, I just got a text like last week that said, we had the heartbeat. The doctor said miscarriage is like totally impossible. Not impossible,
Yeah.
but like super low.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then like for us that have gone through it, it's just like you bite your tongue. But like I feel like for you, did you guys do any type of like beta or blood draw testing, or like your first hit was like the ultrasounds?
I think we did not do like the 48-hour blood testing, because my initial blood test was good.
Was
Like
like
my
fine, yeah.
progesterone, everything was great. There was literally no signs at all that anything was wrong except for the spotting.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. It's so
Yeah.
devastating. Yeah.
And
And
spot, yeah.
that second one we weren't expecting,
Yeah.
obviously. So Dave couldn't get out of work to go with me to that ultrasound. So my mom came. I was like, oh, this will be great. You'll get to see the heartbeat. And like she was just beside herself.
I can't, oh my gosh, I can't like your mom being in the room, that has to be so tough. Did you guys hear that? Like, okay, you've already heard the heart. Did you kind of feel like, okay, I've already had the heartbeat? Well, for you, it was different because you had already gone through that once. So it was like a couple things like lightning doesn't strike twice, but then also like, okay, I feel a little reassured because we've already hit that big milestone.
Yeah, I think the second one was way more of a shock because I just was like, very much, this is not going to happen twice to me. Like, this would be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's how I was too, because then it's like, okay, well, what now? Because the fact that this has happened twice now, I feel like I need to kind of go down a different route. I heard you say in your first DNC, you didn't do the genetic testing just because it was the first one. It seemed like it just was what it was. For the second one, did you guys choose to like test the chromosomes, or you were how'd you kind of
My
move?
doctor again didn't recommend it. She was like, you're still in the realm of like this being totally a fluke, normal. Even during my DNC, she came in and she was like, I had 9 miscarriages and then I was able to have my 3 boys. And I was like,
Your
I
doctor
think you're
said
trying
that?
to help me, but that's not making me feel better.
No,
Wow.
not at all. You're like, I don't want
No,
to go through that.
Yeah, I
no.
was luckily I was on med, so I was like, okay, but it's one thing that like sticks in my brain. I'm like, I don't know how anybody survives 9 miscarriages. Here I am 4 later, and you just do,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. So kind of had it, first of all, I mean, I obviously are both extremely sorry for your losses, all four of them. The first two sound really traumatic. So I'm sorry you had to go through that. At this point, are you still in therapy? And I heard you say earlier, like you didn't give your husband space. I didn't either. Were you guys like making joint decisions of like, okay, we're gonna try again, or what did that look like for you guys?
So at that point, I was still in therapy like once a week. And we were almost done with couples therapy, but we were still doing that about once a week. Um, and I think I was like, okay, we'll take a break to get my cycle back. Um, that one just ended up that my cycle took forever to come back. Like it wasn't until March of 2024 that my cycle returned. So we sort of had a forced break anyway. Um, but during that time, like you're always like, well, I could like potentially ovulate at some point in here. So like, let's just try. So no, long story short, I don't think I gave him the space then either. Um, yeah, I think it's been really tough on him because I just sort of like took the driver's seat and didn't necessarily ask him like, do you want to take a break? Because I was not in the position to take a break.
For sure. Do you think at this point were you like, okay, obviously now I've had two, so like this is probably weird that I've had like two back to back. Like, were you like, okay, something might be like deeper wrong here, or were you just still like, okay, I'm listening to the doctors, these could just be two flukes? Or were you like,
I
maybe
think
there's a bigger issue?
I think I knew the third one was going to be a loss. And so as terrible as it sounds, I was in a rush to get the third one over with
Yeah.
because at that point, my insurance would cover going to see a specialist.
Mhm.
So I was just sort of like waiting to get pregnant to lose it and then be able to have testing.
That is devastating. That is
Mhm.
like, but I mean, I get it. And I think like Amanda and I are gonna interview some REIs later this week. And one of the top questions is like, why are physicians saying that recurrent pregnancy loss is a fluke? And like, it's funny that we're just like using that word and we all kind of like had experience with doctors tell us that. But to your point, for those not listening, typically like that RPL panel is not covered until you've had three losses, which is that
Horrible.
was horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I mean, lucky
horrible.
for me, so I'm in Massachusetts, and so our fertility coverage is like the minimum that Massachusetts requires is a lot. So I was able to get the RPL blood panel, no karyotyping or anything, but the panel at least that January after my loss. And everything looked normal to them or
So when
whatever.
you say that January, was that after your first loss, or did you have to have three?
Um, so my first one was July 2023. My second was
The
Thanksgiving
fall. Okay.
2023. And then January is when I did the blood work.
And do you remember? I've had it done too, and I think Amanda has. It's just a little bit further out for me. Do you remember what that RPL panel looked like for people listening, like what they test for?
I know it was like blood clotting disorders, and then thyroid issues. Um, and I think those were the two main ones. Yeah.
I think so too. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. But to your point, like the karyotyping, which can be extremely important for reoccurrent loss,
Mhm.
that one's like a couple $1,000s. And yeah, it's not standard. I think that was like secondary to the RPL panel.
Yeah, she said that that would be extra, and so we should wait to see if, we have a third one, and then we'll do the karyotyping at that.
Right. So at that point, were you with a REI or were you still with your OB?
Still just with my regular OB. Yeah.
Okay.
Goodness.
Yeah. So then my cycle came back in March. I got pregnant again in April. And the cruel cosmic joke of all of this is that my doctor said, if you have a third one and we do the DNC, we will send it for like all of the testing. And so, of course, my third and fourth miscarriages were natural at home. So there was no way for them to test.
Of course.
Oh my gosh. You're like, seriously, I could have maybe some answers and then, oh,
Oh my goodness. Do you want to touch on those in detail at all? Or was it kind of a similar experience where you're making it to the 7, 8 weeks, you're hearing the heartbeat, or what happened with your third and fourth
So
pregnancy?
those were both pretty much the same story. I made it to maybe like 5 weeks. Like I definitely had a positive pregnancy test, but it wasn't too dark. And then knowing what I had been through before, I would test like every day, and the line was not getting lighter, but it wasn't getting darker. So, and then I just started bleeding. Lucky for me, it wasn't like crazy. There wasn't a lot of pain. It was just basically a late period. Um, I have a huge issue with them calling it a chemical pregnancy. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Because a positive pregnancy test, equals a baby in our mind, no matter what.
For sure.
I always say like we started out at every baby was 5 weeks pregnant. Like every single baby was 5 weeks pregnant. It doesn't mean less than. And it's so tough. And I know that they only call it a chemical pregnancy because they can't clinically see it. But like I think, and Amanda and I both have gone through several of these, like I think those are almost harder to deal with because you're like in the driver's seat of guessing and is the line dark enough and waiting and all that kind of stuff. Whereas sometimes on the ultrasound, you just know immediately, whereas this can just drag on for weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So my doctor did like a blood test to see if the HCG was going down, which I found also kind of silly because obviously it was like there was no way I was still pregnant. Um, so those were tough. The second one was after we had done all of the fertility testing. It was just like, let's just try once more before we do any IVF. Um, so it was that summer of 2024 that we went to an IVF clinic and had all of the like pre-IVF testing done.
Did you just kind of get to the point where you're like, this is doing the same thing over and over again is insanity? Like we have to try something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just sort of sick of waiting, and I figured like if we can control some of the variables, at least maybe it will be easier for us. And I think maybe I had it in me that IVF wasn't that hard. Um,
So I see you smiling. So what was your experience? Tell listeners what your experience. I think IVF is so difficult for those of us that like do get pregnant quite quickly. I mean, for you, like you've had 4 pregnancies in a year, right? It sounds like it was
mhm.
right a little over a year. It's hard to say like I'm going to spend all this money to conceive, but I mean, if you're getting pregnant and not sustaining them, there's really no difference. So how was that experience for you, kind of from start to finish? Or I guess
Yeah, so from the get-go, my clinic was amazing. Like I emailed them the day I started miscarrying and I was like, I need to see somebody. And they got me in immediately with a doctor. He ran through all the possibilities. We did all the testing and everything came back normal. I have no diagnosis. I have nothing. They put me on thyroid medication because it was like teensy bit high, but he was like, there's no evidence that this is what has been causing your miscarriages. So he eventually just said, like, the only thing we can do to help you is IVF because we can't see anything wrong with you. Um, and then, so we signed up November of 2024 was when we started my egg retrieval cycle. Um,
Was your husband on board with this? Like I remember for me it was like pulling teeth to just get him to agree to do IVF.
he agreed, but then it was sort of pulling teeth to get him to go do the blood tests and the other stuff. Um, I was definitely like, I imagine me like putting a rope around his neck and just sort of dragging him along with me. Like, I don't think,
Yeah.
um,
You're like,
They
you
would
have an appointment this day. You are going. Yeah.
yeah, I
Men
don't think
are,
he was
I know,
thrilled.
I feel like men that have been through this with their partner have always been like, if I was in the driver's seat, we just wouldn't have kids because like and I think it's just like truly like maternal instincts. Like we want to have these children and it's such a drive for us. But I even know with my husband, he was just like, I wouldn't have done all that. Like that, you guys are like warriors to like go sign up for all of this stuff. So it's interesting to hear other people's experiences with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, I think I feel bad a little bit because I don't think I ever gave him the choice. And it was only after like, no, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I've given him a choice even up until today. So
I didn't look.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I could relate so much. I literally just told Chris what we were doing. I was like, "Hey, so now we're gonna adopt embryos." Like, I was just like, "This is what we're doing." Sorry, this is
And
like,
yeah, Hannah, I think Amanda and I both could say, and our husbands would say, like, I know mine says now that, we have been able to conceive and Amanda and Chris have their son too. It's like they said, thank you so much. Like, thank you so much for pushing and doing this. And not only until they like, to your point earlier, like physically see this baby in the world, like, can they really comprehend what they've been striving for? And so I know both of our husbands I did not. I'm the same. I didn't give any choice at all, like at all. So don't feel bad. I think you've already done more than Amanda and I did with going to therapy and like working, like giving that opportunity to work through kind of his feelings and giving him a space to talk as well.
Yeah, I mean, to anybody listening, I would 100% recommend couples counseling because, um, like, don't wait till there's a problem. I think everybody should just do it anyway because learning how to talk to each other in a way that, me, like, I can focus on saying things in a way that won't trigger him and that he'll actually be able to hear, that has made, the biggest difference in our marriage, just generally, like,
Yeah.
without
No, that's
fertility.
amazing. That's incredible.
Uh,
And like, especially because you're going through something so difficult that like every person does react differently when you're going through any kind of struggle. So I feel like being able to have like a safe space to be able to truly process for both of you and learn how each other like grieve, I feel like is such a good tool to have.
Yeah, it was. And then graduating from couples therapy is like exciting in itself because you're like, okay, we did it. We
Yeah.
can fight and we'll be fine. Um, but yeah, IVF was not at all what I was expecting. I'm not sure what I was expecting, honestly, but it's a lot of them just like telling you to do stuff and you do it on your own. Like, I was just so confused at the fact that they were like, here's your package of meds, your needles, go watch this video, do it every night, and we'll see you back on X day.
It seems illegal, right?
It's literally.
Like here's all
Yeah,
these like shots and meds. Go ahead and shoot yourself up. It seems just insane.
Well, yeah, you're like,
yeah,
I didn't go to medical school. I have no idea. Like you're trusting me. You're like, no, I don't know what I'm doing.
right. And luckily, like the first med that I had to start was, I forgot what it's called, but it was a pen in my belly. So, like, my husband couldn't mess it up. There was no way I was doing it to myself. He had to do all of them.
Is that the gonal pin? It's like a
Yes.
big,
Yeah.
fat, thick pin. Yeah.
Yep. So there's like no way to mess that up. And then we had to add in, what's the second medication? Whatever it was, it also goes in your stomach. And it was like a classic plunger needle, which totally sent me into a panic. Luckily, my mom's a nurse. So I called her and I was like, you need to come over and do this every night.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I
Um,
think to what your point, like it's every night, it's at these weird hours, weird times. So I mean, I'm sure like IVF just got to the point where they're like, we can't manage this with all these patients. So there you go. They're gonna have to do it themselves.
yeah, it's wild. And then like going in for monitoring every other day or every few days. Um, I think the only good thing is you don't have any seconds to breathe or process what you're doing. And so like you can't get scared or down on yourself because there's just no time for it.
It's a really good way to put it.
yeah, I was just gonna say that's such a good point. I've never really like thought of it like that, but it's so true. Like you just keep going.
Yeah, there's just no time because, then you get to the trigger and then egg retrievals a few days later. And then a few days later, if you're doing a fresh transfer, it's that. And that's when like I would say everything sinks in because you're just waiting.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I feel like I can relate to you a lot. Reoccurrent loss. We did IVF after our fifth loss. And again, I got pregnant 4 times in a year. So I feel like our stories are very similar. My IVF like results or, like numbers were pretty poor compared to like what we did like naturally. What did yours look like? Like with the egg retrieval and kind of the attrition process and embryos, was that like a positive experience for you or what kind of happened there?
No, not a positive experience. So the egg retrieval, I don't know if this is just my clinic or what, but the egg retrieval, my husband wasn't allowed to be there. Like he had to sit in the car. So I went in, they put the IV in, like did everything just me and the
That's that
nurses.
would make sense if it was 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
but like
I was
this was a couple months ago, right? But I
Yeah,
mean,
I think they just like kept their COVID procedures. I don't know, maybe for privacy reasons, but yeah, they had him drop me off and then I was just on my own.
and the egg
When
retrieval is a huge surgery. I mean, the most every time someone asks me about IVF, like I don't want to scare them, but I'm like the scariest part for me was going under anesthesia, just because I had not had a history of having surgeries.
Mhm.
So like you need like support.
Yeah, Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Like having him be able to sit with me before and after would have been a lot better. I do not understand the policy at all, but here we are.
Yes.
Uh, and so then you wake up, you know, um, you wake up and you're like, okay, tell me how many I got. Tell me now. And it took them like 20 minutes to count, and I think I got 11 eggs. And then they call him to pick me up, and like he comes into the clinic and nobody says anything to him, so he texts me being like, I'm here. So it's just really odd. The whole thing was odd, and I put
Yeah.
it like in the contact form afterwards when they asked for support. I was like, this was a strange occurrence for me.
Yeah, that's so
um,
bizarre. Especially because you're like probably out of it. Like I don't even
I
feel like
was,
I'm able to
yeah,
work my phone after like I'm like in
yeah,
the
I
wheelchair
was
out.
pretty confused.
It's so crazy how just little tiny things could make such a difference. Like,
Yeah.
gosh.
So I found the like actual retrieval and everything wasn't that bad. Like I had cramping, but it wasn't um like I would rather do that than the Sono HSG that I had, if that's helpful for anybody.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I got 9 eggs. Amanda, what did you did a couple retrievals, right? Or just one?
Yeah, no,
Just
I
the one.
did. Yeah. And I got like four on one of them and I think three on the other. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hannah, you still beat both of us. Not that you compare, but I
I
do
was
think, oh, go ahead.
I was like still a little disappointed because
Sure.
I don't know if you guys follow like Kelly Girardi. She's an astronaut who does IVF, and she got like 24 eggs. And I was just like, 11 seems like not that much. But even the doctors were like, no, double digits is fantastic.
Right, right. Like that attrition rate. And again, I'm a couple years removed from it, but like I remember getting the call that I got 9 and I just like hung up and broke down crying to my husband. I was like, we have nothing. It's over. It's over. Because the attrition rate from like you can kind of walk us through it what happened to yours, but what is I remember texting Amanda every single 5 minutes of like the 5 day wait, 5 to 7 day wait period of when you're kind of it's expected, like
Yeah.
it's normal to lose X amount every couple days.
And I'm sure also because like for me going into it, I expected very little eggs because I had the low AMH. Where for both of you, like you're like, we get pregnant. So like I know I have eggs there. So I'm sure that was probably even harder to like swallow of like, okay, I thought I would have more eggs because look, I've gotten pregnant so many times recently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Eventually I was okay with the 11. And then my clinic sends messages instead of calling. So I got a message that was like, okay, you got 11. 9 of them were mature, 6 fertilized. And then they don't tell you until fresh transfer day how many became embryos.
Oh my gosh. So
So
you
I
did
was
a
like,
fresh transfer?
I did a fresh transfer because he was like, you know, there's no reason for us to be doing PGT. He said we didn't have any matching like genetic carrier stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
there was just like no reason to do PGT. And my doctor's from Israel. So like he went to med school out of America, out of like the traditional whatever goes on here. And he was like, I think PGT is a scam, and I don't recommend it for you guys. It's $4,000 extra. Insurance doesn't cover it. He was like, we can do it, but I just don't think you should. And
Yeah.
so he opted
That's
to.
just such an interesting perspective to like go in for your transfer and not even know if you have anything. I mean, I guess they would have canceled you to come in, but gosh, that's a little scary.
Those
Yeah.
were my thoughts. I was like, okay, walking in, I saw the hospital bracelet with my name on it, and I was like, okay, I have something because otherwise I wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
But it wasn't until I was like sitting there and I was like, okay, well, how many did you guys get? And they were like, well, we have this one. It was a 5AB.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, there's one that's probably going to become a good enough embryo, and then one other. And I was like, okay. So we went from 11 to 9 to 6 to 3.
And I think that's definitely, I don't want to say textbook, but I feel like that would be like what they would tell you to expect, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, I was just happy to have the one anyway,
Yeah.
but So that one didn't work, and the doctor wasn't necessarily surprised. Like I know fresh transfers have a less to, less success rate. Um, and my husband was like, "We need to take a break. Like your body's
That
been
was
through
his
so much."
put
And
down moment. Yeah.
yeah, he was like, with all of the medications, like you haven't had more than one cycle to have your body just like relax. Like we have to take a break. And so we went on vacation. We took January off, and then we got home from vacation, and I was like, I'm doing a frozen transfer in February.
I'm
I
back.
hear you.
Yeah. Honestly, I was not prepared for the frozen transfer to go the way that it did. And I wish there was somebody out there who could have told me it could have gone this way. Um, it was harder than the retrieval cycle. It was um, going in for monitoring and not knowing every time whether my lining was going to be enough, and then getting the call like no, uh, was so disappointing every single time. And by the end of it, I was like, I cannot take more of this disappointment. Like I mean, obviously the estrogen I was putting into my body wasn't helping my emotional state, but it was too much for me.
Yeah. Goodness. I'm so sorry.
And it was the worst part was my lining got stuck at 6.9.
I
So
was
the
gonna
clinic,
ask you, what is it? 8 that you're supposed to, or
my
what?
clinic would recommend between 7 and 8.
Oh.
And you
And
said it
so
was
the
stuck
doctor
at
was like
6.9.
6.9. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so for listeners that don't know, or if this is like their very first podcast, the estrogen is supposed to help in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Estrogen
Yeah.
increase your lining. So you probably were just like so exhausted. And then you were going in every day to just see if like, okay, could it get that thick? And they really care about the thickness of your lining for the embryo to implant properly.
Yes. Yep. So I did acupuncture. I literally tried everything. And every time I went in, it was 6.9. And eventually the doctor called me and he was like, your progesterone's going up, which means the lining is going to change and that makes implantation more difficult. He was like, we can do it if you want, but my medical advice would be to cancel the cycle.
And especially because you now have 2 left. So it's like you don't want to go through the egg retrieval process again. That was like my thought. I was like, can I just do IVF but only do the egg retrieval process once? And I only got one embryo, so that was fun.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Yeah, this next embryo that we're doing for the frozen is actually higher quality than the first one we used. It ended up being an AA.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so as angry as I was that it got canceled, I was like, I don't want to risk such a good embryo on like not ideal conditions.
Yeah.
So I just said, all right, well, we can cancel. I'll come off the medication. I told him we'd take like a 2-month break and then try again. But I have nothing in me to try again. Like I have absolutely no desire to try again. And obviously, we all know that could change in a day.
Yeah.
But for now, like there's
So we're in April of 2025, and when was the canceled vet?
March.
March of this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
God.
I'm sure you're so
You're still
exhausted.
processing. For sure,
Yeah.
still processing.
Yeah.
Gosh. Oh, I am so sorry.
Yeah. It just sucks that nobody can tell you anything. Like with RPL, like, could we do some more research and figure it out? Because they can say it's normal all they want, but it's not normal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm started January 2020 and still have zero explanation. Number one, for why it has worked for me in the past, or number two, like why it doesn't work. And I did do like the PGT testing, and my embryo was normal, and I, lost it shortly after that positive test for IVF. And then it's like, okay, now I am carrying these babies, but all my labs are the exact same for when I miscarry these babies. Like it is just so wild to me that the answers are literally not there.
Mhm.
It's
Because they haven't
frustrating.
done any research on the human body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh.
So
So I know. I'm like, how is your husband feeling? Are you guys gonna do like another round of couples therapy, or you're kind of just like in this like holding period of like, I need to just like get back to like quote unquote myself, which does that really ever happen after you experience the things that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think I told him before it got canceled, I was like, if it gets canceled, I need a break. Um, and he was nice enough to not say I told you so. But the whole time I was thinking like I should have listened to him and at least taken a little break.
Mhm.
Um, but we've both gone to private, like individual therapy. So we're both like in a much better space. And he is just willing to let me make the decision as long as it's like a discussion. Like if I come to him and I say, I want to do it, he wants to be involved in the decision, but he's okay if like if I went to him tomorrow and was like, I want to do the JK, want to do the frozen embryo cycle, he would say, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, do you have any advice for listeners for like kind of like how to not want to say make yourself take a break because I even heard it in your voice. You're like, that could change tomorrow. Like I know deep down you're gonna keep trying and you're gonna like obviously transfer the two embryos, but any advice for listeners of if they get to a point where you're at in their journey of just like how you can step away for a little bit?
I think you end up just knowing because after all of these steps, like I was like, okay, let's go on to the next thing. Like I was still ready. And then I think my heart just like shattered when I got the canceled FET. And I realized, like, okay, maybe, we're trying to rush into things. We're trying to like push this so hard. And maybe like my body needs a break, but also my emotions. Um, and so emotionally, right now, I could not take another canceled cycle or more disappointment. And in my, personal life anyway, work is really difficult. And so the next 2 months, there's way too much stress. And so I know that like that wouldn't be ideal either. So it's just sort of accepting that like this time is not for you. And that doesn't mean in a few months things will be different. But like you want to give yourself the most ideal chance of having the baby. And especially if I'm going through stress at work, I don't also want to be dealing with a miscarriage or the disappointment of a canceled cycle.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate you sharing that and just letting listeners hear and know and understand that like it is okay to take a break and you do have to listen to, like you said, you just knew at that point that this was it. So I think it's really helpful for listeners to know that if they need to take a step back, that doesn't mean that their whole journey is now ended, that they can take a break and come back and still put everything into it again. And it's okay to just have that space for themselves too. So, well, I appreciate you coming on, and we are going to be like watching, and hopefully, I don't know if you share everything on your Instagram, but we definitely are so hopeful for you on your journey. And whenever you get back into it and do transfer, just know that we're here cheering you on, and there's this community here for you. And we're just thankful you were able to come on the show and share your journey with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys a lot. And just for anybody else listening, it's okay to take the break, but it's also okay during the break if you're secretly calculating when you're ovulating and still trying. I
So
love
spot on. I couldn't have said that any better.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys.